Welcome to the Trailblazing Texas podcast, where we embark on a journey through our diverse Texas landscapes and breathtaking trails while always engaging with our amazing Texas hiking community. So settle in, tighten up those bootlaces, and get ready for the thrilling tales awaiting for you on this episode. Welcome to the Trailblazing Texas podcast. I am your host, Jason, and today we are exploring what I consider to be one of the most popular trails in Texas. It is definitely has a space in my heart. I know there's some other long trails, but I think it's still the longest trail in Texas. And what's kind of funny when I was thinking about this, where it kind of just dawned on me. So the podcast has over 30 published episodes, and I think in every episode I've talked about the Lone Star Hiking Trail in some form or fashion, but I've never dedicated an episode to it. And, it being a big part of my life from September to May, I'm usually on the trail every Sunday. I thru hike the trail. I just said, I've definitely got to put out an episode. I know there's a lot of questions. And I definitely think this would be of value to our hiking community and to our listeners. Now, with that being said, what's even more exciting for this discussion of the Lone Star Hiking Trail is I have an absolute subject matter expert. I would not have thought of anybody else to have come and talked about the Lone Star Hiking Trail with me, and I'm so glad that they accepted the invitation. Melanie, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Jason. Thank you so much. I appreciate you inviting me to come on the podcast.
Oh, absolutely. And just to before we kick this off, can you talk a little bit, how are you involved in the Lone Star Hiking Trail?
Sure. So I am a group leader for the Lone Star Hiking Trail Club. I lead a hike primarily the fourth Saturday of every month. And so that's just once a month for me. I lead a hike. And then I'm also part of the Lone Star Hiking Trail Foundation, which is, the fundraising portion for the Lone Star Hiking Trail. And it's a new entity. It's something that we just started last year, just become our own 501c3. And,
oh, really?
we're growing and building it as we speak. So.
How exciting.
Yeah.
All right. So we definitely got to hit on that stuff because I definitely want to discuss, your lead hikes. I think probably for the last 2 years, I've always told myself, yes, I need to sign up for one of those. And then something happens or my hiking days are on Sunday but I'm definitely going to get out there. And really, really wanted you to come on the podcast is you don't have to be like an expert hiker. You come out there, the hikes or, whatever ability that you have, you're going to be successful. And so I love just watching this, that you put together and all the pictures. And yeah, I think it's a great, an opportunity for people to get into hiking. I just love what's being offered to our community. But before we kind of get into the Lone Star Hiking Trail, I think it's important for me, because I love people's stories, but also to our hiking community to really get to know you as a hiker, backpacker. And then, we'll get into the Lone Star Hiking Trail. So just kind of the first question, how long have you been hiking and backpacking and really involved in the outdoors?
Well, I grew up with camping and fishing with my parents. But as I grew up and became an adult, I kind of got away from all of that, right? And it wasn't until my kids were young and we moved here to Texas. We're originally from Canada. We've been in Texas for just about 18 years now. And when we first moved here, I really didn't know the area. I didn't know the critters to look out for. I didn't know... There's right? It's like, yes. That was a very Texas term, wasn't it? Critters. Uh-huh. But that's okay. That's all right. So I didn't know what to look for. And so it kind of made me fearful of getting outside. And so what I ended up starting with was the Texas Master Naturalist course through the AgriLife, Texas A&M AgriLife Extension. And so through that, I started to learn some of the hiking trails. Like it was first hosted over at W.G. Jones Forest, right here over on 1488 in Conroe. And so they were hosting their weekly training sessions there. And so that was perfect. It was like 10 minutes from my house. And so I was able to go and I learned about W.G. Jones Forest. I had no idea that we had this cool little mini hiking area available right here, um, like 10 minutes from my house, literally. And so I started there and started learning about the hiking community there. And then through hiking, I started to get healthier. I was more overweight than what I am now. I've lost 80 pounds over the last 5 years, and so um,
Wow.
yeah. So through
That's
hiking,
awesome.
yeah. Thank you. So through hiking and being out in the woods and being out in nature, it's really given me my health back. And so part of my mission is to help people learn the local trails, help them learn how accessible it is, and really the benefits of hiking for weight loss and just even just your overall mental health.
Wow. So, would you say that that really inspires you
Oh,
to
absolutely.
yeah.
Uh, Yeah. Yeah, it's one of my primary motivators. And so my other primary motivator is, you know, learning about the hiking trails and sharing it with other people. It really amazes me how many people from the area don't know about these local resources, right? Yeah, like I was in
Yep.
the same boat as you were. It's like
Yep.
there's a mountain in Texas, what? Or like,
Mhm.
what? We have a 96-mile long hiking trail right here, just north of Houston. Like, I mean, that's crazy. And so yeah, just sharing that knowledge with people. And my hope is that, in 20, 30, 40, 50 years, those trails are still going to be here because people know them and they love them and they care about them. Whereas if we have nobody using the local trails, then we're just going to get swallowed up by developers and we're just not going to have any trails, or it's going to turn into an urban park. And I don't really want that either. So,
Absolutely. Yeah, it's funny to look and think about the Lone Star Hiking Trail. It's our AT, it's our Continental Divide Trail, it's our Pacific Crest Trail. It's an opportunity for us to that, we may not ever be able to touch a long trail, but we can get a taste of what a through hike is.
absolutely.
We
Yep,
just need a we just
absolutely.
need a 7-Eleven and what is that? What's that town? It's that long road walk.
Oh, goodness. Oh, like on the Lone Star Hiking Trail, the long road walk?
Yeah,
Uh,
that little town,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Green, what is it?
Yeah, green. Gosh. I can't remember off the top of my head. We'll figure it out. We'll
Yeah,
figure it out.
that town. They need a
Yeah.
7-Eleven there so then we can, resupply.
That
Alright,
would
so
be awesome.
absolutely. So, we've touched on it a little bit, but just to kind of focus, what does hiking and backpacking mean to you? Like you said, like it's now a big part of your life. Um, from health reasons, it's really changed your life. So can you put that into some kind of perspective, like what this activity that we love so much really means to you?
For me, it's like a mini adventure. So like whenever whether it's just a 15-minute hike, at my local park, or it's an overnight on the Lone Star Hiking Trail. It's like this. It's really like a mini adventure. You're escaping from, the regularness of life, right? That was quite the
Hmm.
word there. The
Hmm.
normalcy of life.
Yep.
You're escaping the normalcy of life, and you're just getting into this whole different world where you have to, engage all your senses and use, your wits and your creativeness sometimes, because sometimes there's a log in the middle of the trail or this big old tree and you have to figure out, well, how do I get around this thing? And it might involve some bushwhacking, right? Getting around it. um, and yeah, so I think it's, for me it's like an escape, and like this mini holiday that really isn't very expensive. All you need is your backpack, a few essentials, and a pair of hiking boots or trail shoes if you don't like hiking boots, right? And that's the beauty about the Lone Star Hiking Trail. You could use either, and yeah, just go out there and have an adventure.
And it's really funny that you said that. I'm glad you just said that because I'm going to take that little snippet and say it's not expensive. And I'm going to send that to my wife and say there's somebody else that says it's not expensive because, as you can see behind
Uh,
me.
you
Yeah.
you got a lot of gear. It
Yeah.
can be as expensive as you want it to be. Let's
Yeah.
put it that way. Yeah.
And and also like the hiking boot thing, like that's it's one of my favorite questions about just common misconceptions, and we'll get into that in a second about hiking and backpacking. And that's one of my is that you don't need a hiking boot, right? Like very seldom in Texas, maybe if you're backcountry at Guad or Big Bend, that it maybe makes sense. But yeah, just some comfortable shoes and head out.
Absolutely. It does help to have trail shoes so that you have a bit of a good grip, right? Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I wouldn't want to go out there with, I don't know, something too slippery. But um, yeah, hiking boots
Yeah.
are more favorable, especially if you're in a rocky area. But
Yeah.
the Lone Star Hiking Trail, you can get away with just trail runners. Yeah.
Yeah, I was on Guad heading up to the peak. I was taking my sister, and there was a gentleman and his girlfriend, and they had flip-flops.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I
People
was
will hike
like,
in anything. Yeah.
yes. And they had one bottle of water, and it was like 93 degrees at Pine Springs heading up. And I'm like, no. Like, I usually don't interfere with people hiking, and I just was
Yeah.
like, you guys don't really understand what you're getting into. You need to think about this before you head up.
Yeah. Maybe just go for a mile, not to the peak. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. I know when I did Guadalupe Peak a couple of years ago, I took 90 ounces of water with me and I drank every last ounce of it. Like I came down, I wish I had another 6 or 7 ounces, right? Because
No.
yeah, it was like gone. So
Yeah, that desert environment takes it out of you for sure.
it sure does.
And
Yeah.
and speaking of Guadalupe Mountains, and it's however you answer this next question will dictate how long the episode goes.
Yeah.
So, what what is your favorite national park in Texas?
Guadalupe Mountains.
Yes,
Yay.
we're gonna keep going.
That's
No,
awesome.
no, no. In all seriousness, like Big Bend, Guadalupe. Where are you going? What's your favorite?
Gosh, you know what? I am going to Guadalupe in November. I have actually never been to Big Bend. So
Okay,
that is on my list, definitely. But yes, going to Guadalupe in November. I'm going with a group of women, and we're going to go and summit. And
nice.
I'm definitely wearing my hiking boots,
Yep,
just because of the rocks.
yep. And what about state park? What's your favorite state park?
Oh gosh, there's so many really great ones.
Hmm.
Um, so I typically say what my favorite is the ones that I can access frequently, just because I love to get out there and be out in nature. So I'm going to say Huntsville State Park first.
Yep.
Uh, is absolutely my favorite just because of its proximity. Um, and then other than that, state parks, I'm going to stick with Huntsville.
Yeah. All
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. How about
And
you? What's yours?
oh man, so that's a great question. I have the answer. I'm just trying to think about how to explain it. I am a supporter of the black sheep of the family type of a guy. So you have Big Bend, which is really, really popular, and you have Guadalupe Mountains, which is one of the least visited national parks in the United States. And I'm a Guad fan all day long. I even have a Guad tattoo. I've hiked and backpacked the whole park. Found the plane crash, found Jose's grave. I think I'll be there in October the 11th. I have a 5-day backcountry backpacking trip planned. Um, the history, everything about that park, I love. For state parks, It's the same type of scenario. You have Palo Duro, which is second biggest canyon in the United States, the most, I would argue, the most popular uh, Texas state park. But I like its evil stepbrother, Caprock. Caprock is my favorite state park. There's nothing like being out on the trail alone at 6 in the morning, sun's coming up, you round a bush and there's a bison 2 feet from you. So yeah, those are my favorite. Absolutely, Big Bend is wonderful. Absolutely, Palo Duro is wonderful. But places that I'm at in those and Caprock and in Guadalupe, I don't see anybody. So like I'm in the back country, um, way off from anything I guess you could deem popular, and I enjoy that, just to kind of have that solitude and but yeah, I mean, not to knock Paladuro or Big Ben, but yeah, I'm a definitely like the evil stepbrother of the national and state parks.
That's awesome. The I have a story about Caprock. So we
Yeah,
went
let's
and
hear it.
visited. Yeah, I love Caprock Canyon. I think that's a fabulous state park. My husband and I, we went to a primitive campsite, right? And staying at a primitive campsite, and we were sitting there having our dinner, and then while we're eating our dinner, we heard this extra person going munch, munch, munch. And it's like, what is that? What is that noise going on? I'm kind of looking around it. Was it a chipmunk or a squirrel off in the bushes? Like
Yeah,
eating at the same time we were, right? And so I stood up and I looked around this one bush, and there was a bison standing
yeah.
there chewing on a bush, having dinner with us. So it was like this unwelcome dinner guest, but it was fun to have them in camp with
And
us.
that's kind of that happened to me too. Like, so we were at North Pronghorn Primitive Camp,
Oh yeah, yeah, that's the
and
one we were at.
yeah, and you know those bison, when you walk in the back country back there, you run into, not a lot, but you will run into a bison that's just by himself. And I don't know if it's because he's sickly and the herd kind of kicks him out, or it was like a younger male coming into his own, and then the bull that's kind of in charge of the herd kind of gets rid of him. But yeah, same thing. It's like 3 in the morning, and I kept hearing something, kept hearing something, kept hearing something, and then of course, if you go use the restroom, and it's sitting right outside your camp, and I'm just thinking, like, what happens if that guy's just walking, and you're in his way, and he just like tramples your tent or something. Um, and then you get into, yeah, like in the Lone Star hiking trail, I've run into some coyotes early in the morning, but like you get out at Caprock and just out in the middle of nowhere, and just like 12 o'clock, 2 in the morning, hear those coyotes talk to each other. And it was me and my wife. We were, same trip, but there were three groups of them, and one of the groups, we were able to see like footprints, and uh they used the restroom, but find their scat, that they were probably 40 yards from the tent, but there was three groups of them, and they were just kind of talking to each other. And
Yeah,
of course she was kind of scared, but yeah, it's absolutely amazing to think about us, what we have as Texans and what we have access to, and the diversity of our national and state parks.
oh, I think it's a fabulous place where we live, and just you know, the accessibility of it. I know some things you have to book way far in advance, right? Like the real popular places. But some of these less popular places, you can get into them pretty good, and you don't have to book too far in advance. So,
Yeah, and a lot of
yeah,
times, like Paladuro, like, okay, I go to Caprock, I'm not going to see. It's going to look kind of like Paladuro, so it's just kind of a I still kind of get the same bang for my buck, I guess you can say, and certainly be able to get in for sure.
absolutely, absolutely. I think another state park that I really like is Martin Dive. So Martin Dice Jr. That's state park, right? Yeah, that's state
Hmm.
park. And it's in East Texas, not far from Jasper in that area, and it's just a real pretty special area, and it's not crazy busy. Cabins, they have some really adorable cabins that you can stay in, and I think I looked at the prices the other day. It was only $45 a night. Like,
Yep.
yeah, it's
And,
amazing.
and what I like about that park, and and like especially to new hikers and backpackers, is there's a whole lot of trails, but they're not very long.
Right.
And so like you can like if you don't feel comfortable reading a map, and if you don't feel comfortable, not, I don't want to say compass navigation or something, but just navigating and using your app for the first time when it kind of really matters, and you're on the trail, that is a wonderful part, because like you can sit there and just like, okay, I want to go from, this trailhead to this trail to this trail, then down back to this trail over to here. So you can really customize, and like you could probably even day hike the whole park in a day, and you're never too far away from anything, but you can really start to build that confidence in, looking at a map and looking at the trails that you're on and trying to connect things. And so I love that park. It's fabulous. Now that we know your favorite state and national parks, what's your favorite trail in Texas and why? And it doesn't have to
Yeah.
be the Lone Star Hiking Trail, but it could be.
Well, I do love the Lone Star Hiking Trail for many various reasons, but
Yeah.
really, like my absolute favorite little trail, and it's not very long. It's in W.G. Jones National Forest, and it's the Sweetleaf Nature Trail, and it's just this short little, like 2 to 3 mile trail. You can get in there. It's great for families. It's great for um, any fitness level. Lots of people will go and run the trail if they want to run the trails in there. But it's got this cute little suspension bridge that goes over the creek, and it just has this, it's like this urban escape, I guess. And
Yeah.
yeah, I think that's probably one of my favorites, Sweetleaf Nature Trail. And then, of course, Lone Star Hiking Trail, Trailhead number 6, and
Yep.
Trailhead number 1. I have my favorite trailheads too. So,
That
yeah.
is my recommendation for anybody. You know, again, you may have never hiked in your life, but that Trailhead 6, it's only what,
Hmm.
0.6 miles, and it dumps
Yep.
out into Lake Conroe, and you get there, right before sunrise, and you are going to witness the most spectacular sunrise ever. Like I have pictures that people are
I've
like,
seen your
"Where is
pictures.
that?" Yeah,
Yeah.
people are like, "Where in the heck is that?" I go, "It's right down the road." And they're like,
Exactly.
mhm.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
it's
that's
accessible for everybody, right?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Except for maybe a wheelchair. I don't know. Not that kind of accessibility.
Yeah, and we hiked it with some friends, and they had a stroller,
Oh
and they
yeah.
were pushing their child on this stroller, and all the way, all the way went all the way to Stubblefield.
Oh
And
wow.
yeah, that was crazy. But yeah, even with the stroller, maybe with some kind of bigger tires, that it's even
Yeah.
accessible for, if you want to take your little one down there and just kind of look at the water.
Well, I think it's short enough too, like point 0.6 of a mile. It's short enough for, a kid in a backpack or to let them walk most of it too, depending on how old they are, of course, but
Yeah,
it
absolutely.
might take you all day.
That's right. Uh, so, with if you kind of look back at all your hiking experiences, you share any stories of your most memorable ones?
Oh gosh. Um, well, I think every hiking experience is a memorable experience, but most memorable, usually the mishaps are the most memorable, right? Like,
Mhm.
I was hiking with the Lone Star Hiking Trail Club and carrying my backpack. We were doing an overnight backpacking trip. We we were we kind of did a loop, and it included part of the Lone Star Hiking Trail and a little bit of bushwhacking, kind of coming around. And we were going through this one area where it was a lot of trees were down and there was a lot of shrub that you kind of had to navigate through. And so one of the trees decided to grab onto my hiking boot as I was stepping over it. And so of course it like hung
Oh,
on to me, and I went forward and I ended up on my hands and knees, and I felt like it was slow motion, but my backpack kept on going. And
oh
so it
no.
yeah. So the backpack kept on going and it just pulled me over, and I ended up doing, just kind of a flop over. It was very ungraceful in my opinion. My husband said, I wish I had my camera going. So because it was like, it was in slow, he said it was like you were in slow motion, just kind of going over and then flopped off to the side. So,
Oh,
but no injuries, no injuries, just kind of this slow motion
yeah,
acrobatics, right?
yeah. You just
Um,
have to repair the ego a little bit. You get back up, dust off.
exactly.
Hey, it
Yeah.
happens.
Yeah.
It happens.
Yeah. It does happen. And then other memorable occasions. Well, recently did a day hike to Denver. That's going to stick in my memory for a long time. So day
So
hiking.
describe what that is to the
Describe
listener.
a day hike to Denver from Houston. Okay, so we're in Houston, right? And then every once in a while, Frontier Airlines will do a $19 deal to fly to Denver. And so you have to keep an eye on these deals. And to get full advantage of the deal, you have to fly there in one day and fly back the same day. So you take the very first flight out, which is at like 5:30 in the morning, and the last flight back is at 8 p.m. at night. And so basically, when you get there, you land at, what time is it? You land at around 8:30 in the morning, which is plenty of time to grab a rental, drive to a trailhead, do a day hike. We did about 9 miles, and then jump back in the rental vehicle, drive back into town. We went for dinner, and then we hit the airport and we flew home. So it's
That's crazy.
right. And so it was a lot of fun. It's really no different than getting in the car early in the morning and driving out to whatever trailhead you want to go to, and then driving back when you're done hiking. Um, but yeah, it was a really fun experience. Flew in and we went straight to 10,000 feet. So this one was a high altitude hike. So
Oh,
from, what are we at here? 200 feet, I think. Um,
maybe.
right? Depending on where you're at.
Yeah.
Anywhere between 0 and 200 feet. And so, yeah, so we flew in, grabbed the rental, drove right to 10,000 feet and started our high altitude hike. And, everybody did great. A little bit of headaches, as you can be expected, just be from going straight up to high altitude in one day and or within a few hours, I guess. And, but yeah, I think we all did really well.
Mm. Well,
Yeah.
and we'll get into here in a second, but to the listeners, 10,000 feet is nothing for you, right? How many times have you done Kilimanjaro?
3 times. Yeah,
Yeah,
three
so
times now.
10,000
Yeah.
feet is a giggle.
Yeah. It's like, yeah, I could do that. When it was proposed to me, it's a high altitude hike. It's like, yeah, okay, no problem. I can do
Yeah,
that. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
especially just and I've always wondered because, like, we were talking before. I always get into Denver. We head up to Breckenridge, and I'm usually doing some little bitty hikes around Breckenridge. There's some beautiful, alpine lakes and stuff. And I don't really start hitting 13 and 14,000 feet hikes until, I've been there for a couple of days and kind of acclimatized. So how was it for you just coming into Denver and just hitting the trail? Like, was it okay? Did you like, oh man, maybe we should have, like, and even with the other party, like maybe we should have waited a day, or was it everything pretty okay?
I think we were all okay. Everyone who went was in really good cardiovascular health, right? So we were all very healthy, all
Hmm.
very fit, done, lots of, I guess, lots of experience hiking. So that was one thing in our favor, right? I kind of
Yeah.
cheated a little bit because of my experience with Kilimanjaro. Whenever you go and do Kilimanjaro, their summit is at 19,320 feet. So when you go to do that mountain, it's always recommended that you take Diamox. And so I actually had some Diamox in my cupboard. And so I took just a little bit just to, you know, quash any fears that I had, because of course, I don't know how I'm going to react going
All right.
instantly or almost instantly to 10,000 feet. And so I took a little bit of Dimox. And so it was interesting when we were on the mountain, the four other ladies who I was with did not take any Dimox. And one of the girls had a pulse oximeter. And so at about the halfway point on the mountain, we were just curious. And so we pulled out the pulse ox. And so my pulse ox with the Diamox, I read 98% oxygen level in my blood. And the other
Wow.
girls, yeah, the other girls were at 86%. So I found that just kind of interesting how that worked.
That's
So,
crazy.
so either it was the Diamox or maybe I just processed uh, better. I don't know.
Oh, yeah, that would
You
be
never know.
interesting. What do you
Right.
normally, do you know? Like just kind of like normal.
Normal pulse ox is at
Mhm.
around 98%. Yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. So kind of a normal range for people is anywhere between 95 and 99%.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh wow. So speaking of that, and you can answer this in two questions. One specific to Texas and one just in general, but what has been your most difficult hiking or backpacking trip for Texas or just in general?
I think in Texas, so there's the Goodwater or Lake Georgetown Loop or the Goodwater Loop. Have you been on that
Hmm.
one?
I have
Yeah.
not. Hmm.
No. That was a fun hike. It's a fun hike, but it's also challenging because, um, we're not used to the rocks and the hills, right? Being from the area around Conroe and the Lone Star Hiking Trail, most of our surface is dirt or pine needles or sand. Whereas when you go over to the Goodwater Loop, it is quite a lot of it is rocky, and so we're
Mm,
just not used to that. So I find that challenging and difficult and interesting too at the same time. Guadalupe Peak is always, very challenging. It's a lot of up, right? And I find people try to do it too fast, and you just have to slow down and just take your time going up, right? And I think Guadalupe is what, 8,600 feet? I think that's the peak.
yeah,
86.
it's I have all my peak signs right here.
Do
I have
you? Nice.
8750, 8754. It's yeah,
Okay. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So, going from 200 feet elevation to 87, I think it's not going to affect your oxygen levels, like your blood oxygen levels, right? But it will affect your cardiovascular, where your
Mm.
breath and your breathing, and so it really depends on your cardiovascular fitness. What was the second part of the question? I forget.
So it's same question, but maybe not related to Texas. So, just
Oh,
kind
okay.
of in general.
Yeah. So there's the Eagle Rock Loop in Arkansas, and then
Hmm.
also the Ouachita Trail. Um, the Ouachita Trail is kind of fun. Another long distance hike, right? We parked at Queen Wilhelmina State Park. You're allowed to park your vehicle there, and you can like register it and leave it there for the length of your hike. And I thought it was fun to, figure out the shuttles and how to, go from point A to point B and then get the shuttle ride back. And
Yeah.
but that was just a fun hike and see some different territory. And again, the rocks, right? Like that's the
Yeah.
difference between hiking locally and then going somewhere else. And then now you have these rocks that you have to deal with. So, but then same with Kilimanjaro. So Kilimanjaro is like
That's got to be
smaller
the
rock.
hardest, right?
Oh yeah. Well, it's hardest because of
Yeah.
distance and elevation. And so, one hiker described it as you have for the first 2 days you have lush green rainforest, and then you get into rocks, and you start with smaller rocks, and then you get into bigger rocks, and then you have the the rocky valley of death, and then you have the rocks at high altitude. So
Yeah.
yeah, but yeah, Kilimanjaro is its own crazy challenge in itself. Um, the porters, like the guides, you can't do Kilimanjaro without hiring a local guide. And so
Right.
I've used the same guide service all 3 times that I've gone, and their service is just incredible. Like they'll serve you tea and coffee in the morning. They'll set up the tents for you. They'll tear down the tents for you, and they'll cook all the meals. All you have to do is carry your day pack, and
Wow.
they'll even come back and get your day pack from you when you start getting closer to camp. So, and they're,
Wow.
yeah, it's really, it's really like an incredible service that they provide. And I think most of the tour guides offer that type of service.
Yeah.
Um, but I don't want to, I've had such good luck and good service with the guy that I use that, um, I would never go with anybody else. So
What is the turnaround for that trip out and back? Like the
usually for
duration?
Kilimanjaro,
Hmm.
usually about 7 days, 6 to 7 days
Okay.
you can do Kilimanjaro in, but then it takes like almost 2 days to get there,
Yeah.
with flights and stuff, because the flights are challenging, just because of distance, right?
No.
Yeah,
Ah, it's crazy.
yeah.
So, in all your experience, and let's kind of relate it to Texas, and I think you even mentioned one, and it would be one that I would use is Trailhead 6 to Lake Conroe. What are some of the
Hmm.
hidden gems or secret spots that you've discovered in your hiking journey that maybe, people may not know about or,
Yeah. Um, so Trailhead won, but during the summer, and I know a lot of people don't like to hike during the summer in Texas because it's 100 degrees outside, right? But Trailhead won in July, near the end of July. You get these, it's like fields and fields of the purple gay flower, or the Kansas
Mhm.
City gay flower, I think it's called. It's like this very tall, um, skinny, purple flower.
Mhm.
And so it's absolutely gorgeous. And there's just fields and fields of it. And then the butterflies that are attracted to it, usually it's the swallowtails that are there, the yellow and the blue ones. I think it's called a black swallowtail. They're flittering around, and I could just sit out there
Oh.
and watch, just watch the butterflies, for hours. It's like this, my own entertainment, right? So I love that. So Trailhead won during the summer, and then the other one, of course, Trailhead number 6 is a favorite. But the other hidden gem would be, and I don't know if I'm allowed to say it, but Niederhorfer Lake. Have you been to Niederhorfer?
I
Um,
have not, and there's
you
a
gotta go
there
to Niederhorfer.
hold on, there is somebody that created a video, an old
Uh
timer,
huh.
on how to get there from Trailhead 8, the
Uh
Four
huh.
Notch Loop,
I
and
know how to
like,
get there.
girl, we'd be
Uh,
talking afterwards. Hey, this episode, I was ready. I have my maps, compass, and I have the trail book.
oh, nice. Very cool. Yeah, it's not in any of those. I'll tell you how.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll talk later. I'll
All
tell you
right,
how to get there.
definitely,
Yeah,
definitely.
yeah,
And I have a acquaintance, Brian. He goes there all the time, um, and it's just like I'll be on that. I guess it's the eastern side of Four Notch Loop, and I know that like in one map it looks like there's kind of a road, and then when you get out there I can't find anything, and then on this other map that's on my phone there's no road, and yeah, I'm like
yeah.
0 for 4. And
It's a secret. It's a secret spot, but you can get to it. My husband and I, we rode our bikes to it,
mhm,
um, just a couple of weeks ago, shortly after that section reopened after Barrel.
mhm,
And so you can take your bikes down Four Notch Road,
mhm.
and then get onto a Forest Service road and get into Niederhorfer that way. But you can
Oh,
also,
okay.
yeah, you can. I'll show you both ways. Yeah,
Yeah,
I'll
and
show you.
for what is the camping like there? Is
At
it
Niederhorfer?
Yeah, is it first come, first serve? Is it just
Yeah, so it's not, yeah, it's first come, first serve, just like all the campsites
Mhm.
in like the primitive camps and the hunters camps on along the Lone Star hiking trail. They're all first come, first serve. Now,
Yeah,
Niederhorfer is not part of the Lone Star hiking trail. It's off to the side, so it's not officially part of it. But it is part of the Sam Houston National Forest, and so open camping is allowed,
mhm,
except during hunting season. So
right,
during hunting season, you're restricted to primitive campsites and like designated primitive
right.
campsites and designated hunters camps. Yeah,
But it's worth the trek out there?
definitely, 100%.
Alright. I
Yeah,
definitely yeah,
yeah,
and it's funny
yeah,
because you know, I'm like that, like, at Guadalupe Mountains, so found the B-24 plane crash. It took me a couple of years to get the coordinates, went a couple of times because it's, you walk a ridge and then you drop down and you're not supposed to go back there,
yeah,
and or back then it was okay because the actual the ranger said, "Yeah, that's where it's at," because I was just confirming the coordinates, but you get off this ridge and you drop down and it's really, really steep. And I think that time of year you couldn't really see where you're placing your foot. And I came up to a cliff and I had my son up on the ridge in case something happened. And I'm like, yeah, we're not doing this. And I took him out again. We didn't find it. And then the third time, I guess he was bad luck, but I went out there and I was with a group from the Midland Odessa hiking Facebook page, like a group from there,
yeah,
and we were able to find the plane. It was just incredible. And then there was an old Indian grave. It's a Mexican Apache named Jose Murillo Ponseco, where he was killed by Indians. And I researched his grave, researched where it was, and I heard from an old story from a gentleman, Mr. Espinosa in Van Horn. He owned a restaurant, and I used to go to this restaurant every time I would go to Guad's. And he was telling me about this grave and researched it and actually found it. So like, you know, that one little pond that what is it,
Niederhorfer. Yeah.
yeah, Niederhorfer. I've been looking for it, and so I that really kind of energized. I love to just understand, kind of what's around and try to find it, or any kind of like legends or stories, and try to find that stuff. So yeah, that was one of the ponds that were eluding me for many years. So going on to the next question, this is probably my favorite question of all, is what do you think, or what to you are some common misconceptions about hiking in Texas that maybe you see, when you're doing your guided hikes and stuff from new hikers or backpackers?
Well, one is, what about the snakes?
Mm,
You know, I think a lot of people think that as soon as they step foot onto a hiking trail, they're gonna step on a snake, or they're gonna see a snake, or they're gonna get bit by a snake. And it's like, I bet you I've seen less than a dozen snakes in
as much as you hike out
that,
there?
yeah, in 7 years of hiking. Less than a
Really?
dozen. Yeah. Like it's really rare for me to see a snake. Now, other people are better at spotting snakes.
Yeah.
maybe I'm just maybe I'm just oblivious to snakes and I just
Yeah.
don't see them. I don't know. But yeah, I have not seen a lot of snakes, and
Wow.
so that's, yeah. Go
I would
ahead.
say probably 70 to 80% of the time, and I'm on the Lone Star Hiking Trail almost every Sunday for the
Uh
last,
huh.
I think I started when I found out about the trail right before COVID and we through hiked it. Um, I would say at least 75% of the time I'm seeing some kind of snake.
Really? See, I'm just
Hmm.
terrible at spotting them. Then I'm just I'm not the critter spotter, not at all. So that's one misconception. Well,
Mhm.
maybe in your opinion, not a misconception. The other one is, it's too hot to hike, right?
Mhm.
People want to wait for this perfect hiking temperatures, but what I found, when you get out onto the trails, it's usually 10 to 15 degrees cooler in the forest than it is in the city. So if it's 100 degrees, in Houston when you or in even in Conroe and you're surrounded by concrete and buildings,
Yes.
that heat is totally different when you're on the trail, right? So when you get into like the dirt and the forest, and it just feels so much better. It still is hot, right? And you still have to hydrate lots, and you have to be prepared, and you want to get off the trail early or take lots of rest breaks, things like that. But for the most part, I find it at least 10 to 15 degrees cooler on the trail than it is in the cities. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's and I know for me, like I don't hike in the summer, but you're absolutely right. Like sometimes I just use the heat as an excuse. And like for me, I the biggest one that I have is when I usually talk to or get someone new to kind of dive into this hiking and backpacking is, and I think we've talked about it is, oh, I got to have hiking boots. And I'm like, no, absolutely not. Please don't buy a
No.
hiking boot. You are not going to have a comfortable experience. Or like they buy a new hiking boot and they wear it, day one. They just got them and now they're already on the trail. There's no, breaking them in or any of that stuff. I have a this is this because you lead hikes and I have a thought about this and I really wanted to get your opinion and what you do in certain situations. How do you feel about water bladders and people using water bladders that hike with you?
Um, I'm fine with it. I don't have anything against a water bladder. I use water bladders and I use bottles. I do both.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think one issue with water bladders is that you don't really know when you're going to be empty. Like it's hard to gauge how
Mm-hmm.
much water you're drinking. So I tend to have like a backup bottle of water, if that makes sense.
Yep.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, yeah. So that I know for myself, it's like, okay, if I finish all this water, I know that I have 16 more ounces, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, yeah,
Yeah, and I think for me, I'm starting a movement anti-water bladder,
yeah.
and
Are you?
I always joke with my friends that if they ever hike with me with a water bladder, I'm going to take my knife and stab their bladder,
That's
and then
rude.
and hold on, and then tell them, okay, now how are you going to filter water? How are you going to refill that? How are you going to
Yeah.
repair it? What happens if it leaks? And so it was interesting. So as you're leading groups, I want to know, and you said it like you hit the nail right on the head. I want to know how much water you have.
Mhm.
And I think at times when we use bladders, we think it's like a water ferry that just an endless amount of water. But every dangerous situation that I've been in, it's been with, people that are less experienced that have a bladder and we run out of water.
Yeah.
And like so if I'm going with people that are less experienced, and what I'll usually do is for every person I'll carry at least a half a liter just as a buffer. But we did a 16-mile day on the Lone Star hiking trail by mistake. We missed the turn and two people ran out of water. I was able to give them some water, but like every time we would stop and take breaks, like I wouldn't know how much water, they wouldn't know how much water. And so yeah, I'm anti bladder, but I just thought like, when you're leading these groups, like how does that, and how you feel about the water bladders? But no, I just think it's interesting.
It is interesting for sure.
Hmm.
And then, so how do you, like how invasive, maybe invasive is the wrong word, but how much oversight should a hike leader have over the participants of a hike? And I think it depends on the distance, maybe
Yeah.
that you're planning to go, and maybe the level of remoteness, right?
Yeah.
Like if you're going on this hike with me in this area, then we need to have X, Y, and Z
Yeah.
prepared, right? Like you need to have your water, you need to have this, because you're right. As soon as, if you have an inexperienced hiker with you and they run out of water, as the hike leader, now you're sharing water and then you're putting
No,
yourself at risk, right?
no, no.
So yeah, so that's just some of the dangers of being a hike leader, I think.
Yeah, and I think,
Unfortunately, yeah.
yeah, I try to have the conversations with the new hikers and backpackers and say, and my thing is, because you have a water bladder, they leak, they certainly can get punctured. Um, you never know how much water you have. And I just have the conversation like this is what the using that potentially could happen. Yeah, like I don't know if you can see behind me, I have
I see
a
some ropes.
bazillion
Oh yeah,
I have a
yeah.
bazillion smart water bottles, and I pick
I
these
see
up
that.
off the trail. If people throw them away, I wash them out, I use them. But if one of those leaks or gets punctured, I still have 3 or 4 more. Um, and so, yeah, I just thought, it would be an interesting conversation of your opinion. I had a guest on. He was the inventor of trail brush. It's the most amazing thing if you're a backpacker. Hold on one second.
What's trail brush?
So, you're when you're in the back country, you're eating your meal and you have a long-handled spoon,
Yep.
to ding.
Uh
It's the toothbrush that fits on your long-handled spoon.
huh.
So you
Oh, look at
never
that.
Yes.
Oh, how
It's
funny. So it just kind of, it's like a
yeah.
silicone and it pushes into that little open spot of your handle. Oh,
Yeah.
that's so cool.
So the gentleman, he's in Virginia. His name is Andrew. A young kid, just had an idea on an airplane that he was talking to someone, and they were like, he had hiked the Appalachian Trail with his girlfriend, and he was trying to explain to the person on the airplane, like, why you count grams, and people are cutting the ends off their toothbrush to save an ounce or two. And the
Yep.
idea just hit him. And so he ran with it. And come to find out, there's only 3 vendors that make these spoons. So I don't care what the brand of spoon you buy, they're made by one of 3 vendors. And so the end point, that little circle is all the same for all the spoons.
Oh, that's
So
so fun.
yeah. And kind of going back to the water, I have a friend. He made he's in Texas, and he has an ultralight gear company called Trekker Joe's.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so when I was kind of going through this bladders, no bladders, thinking about this, my issue was I could have smart water bottles, but I can't reach back and grab them.
Yep.
So I found this just fits on your shoulder strap of your backpack.
Yep.
And
My
so I
day,
always
yeah.
have, and also like for big water carries, I usually have 2 liters in the front right here, and then in my hip belt, 2 liters. And the weight distribution of having 2 liters in the front and about it's crazy. So, finding this Trekker Joe's water bottle sleeve holder really facilitated me to be like, the anti bladder and
Anti-bladder. Yeah.
yeah.
I do have on one of my day packs that I do have kind of a built-in water bottle holder right there.
Uh,
And I really do enjoy that. Like it's just so handy and convenient. And you're right about trying to reach into those pockets in the back. It's,
yeah, I
I
can't
don't
do
know.
it.
It's like designed for a 15-year-old who has like this
Yes.
ultra flexibility, right? It's like, I can't
Yes,
reach that.
exactly.
Like,
uh so let's say I'm hiking on the trail and I run into you. What are some of the essential items that you always carry?
oh goodness. Always have a whistle.
Yep.
Always have water, always have snacks, always have a few band-aids, a little bit of duct tape, some waterproof matches. Um, what else is in there? I probably almost always have my hiking pole. I use it for quite a few things other than just hiking. Like I'll like move brush out of the way, or you can like some of the vines that have like real pricklies on them. You can like move those out of the way with your hiking stick. Um, what else? Always my hat is an essential item. Always water. Always some sort of communication device. So for me, it's usually my phone, But for my husband, when we go on further, longer distances or more remote, we have a Garmin that we
Hmm.
take with us. That's um, considered essential. There's been a few times where I said, okay, if you do that, where's the button that I push?
Hmm.
Right? And yeah, I think that about covers it. A little bit of first aid, water, snacks. Yep.
You need, what about, because of where we live, bug net, like a head net or
I
bug spray?
Yeah, definitely bug spray for sure. Like I usually carry just some wipes, like the little pouches of wipes.
Hmm.
I have that just thrown in. That just stays in my kit, my backpack all the time. Oh, a knife is usually pretty handy. Not usually for a day hike, I'll do it, but for overnight is definitely, I'll have a
Yeah.
pocket knife on me. Um, but yeah, I've never used the bug net, although in some places that I've been to, that would have been really handy. But I think if the bad bugs are that bad, I'm usually retreating to my tent at that point, or or you just try to hike faster than the bugs and get out of that area, right? Yeah.
Yeah, those horse flies on the Lone Star hiking trail,
Oh, they can be
man,
brutal.
it
Yeah. Yeah.
oh,
Yeah. So what I do, my trick that I do for them is I'll take off a like a stem of the beautyberry uh, branch,
yep.
right? I'll take a a branch of it, and I'll just use it like a swish, like a horse's tail,
Oh,
and I'll
okay. Yeah,
just
yeah.
swish. I'll just keep on swishing around me, and they tend to stay away.
Oh, I'm gonna have to
Yeah.
try that because, like, Trailhead 1 to this was the first weekend in September. It was beautiful. We had a little cool front. There were not one horsefly, and then I did Trailhead 6 to Stubblefield the next weekend, and oh man, towards Stubblefield, I was I was running with my hats.
Ready?
Yeah, they were.
Yeah, they're brutal. Those
Yes.
horseflies are absolutely brutal. But yeah, the swish really helps a lot. Yeah, just to have that constant motion, and I just swish it as I'm walking, just kind of make it a like a regular rhythm, just make it part of my walk. So that does help a lot.
So, as a guide on the Lone Star Hiking Trail, and just maybe on some of the state parks that you did, you have any memorable wildlife experiences that you could share with us?
You know what? It's probably the buffalo is the most memorable. I've
Yeah,
I've only seen one hog on the, and it wasn't even on the Lone Star Hiking Trail. I've seen,
really.
yeah, I've seen evidence of hogs, and I've heard them at night, but I've never actually seen them while I'm out hiking. Um, I've had coyotes, kind of when we were at Goodwater Loop over by Lake Georgetown. We had
Hmm.
coyotes coming into our camp, and they were pretty noisy. I was a little fearful of that for whatever reason. I don't know. I don't think
Yeah.
they're going to do anything, but I suggested, one time I thought it would be a good idea to have a game camera and set it up outside my tent. And then my husband says to me, "Do you really want to know what's what's
Oh, yeah.
going on outside your tent?" So, but some friends of mine, they were camping at, it was one of the equestrian parking lots. And it was a hunter's camp also over not far from Double Lake. This was a couple of years
Hmm.
ago. And so they were camping at that site, and they had 3 or 4 tents set up in an area, and the hogs actually came, like couple of herds came like running through the right in the
Oh
middle of the
my
tents and stuff.
gosh.
Yeah, yeah. So that was pretty scary for them. And at that same campsite, we just had this one bird. It was like a nocturnal animal, or a nocturnal bird. And so all night it was like I think it's called John Wick's widow, I think, or something. Yeah, John Wick's widow or something like that, whatever that bird is. And so it would just kind of do its song, but all night. And I was sleeping in a hammock that night, and so it was like up in the tree, like right beside me, and that
Oh,
when they would fly away. And so for that, yeah, like nothing really scary, like just interesting things, but nothing really awful. So
yeah. So I have
yeah,
two phobias. Not,
what's that?
snakes don't really bother me, but hogs, because I usually start hiking really early in the morning, 5
Yeah,
or 6 in the morning. and ticks. So whenever
Oh
I'm on
yeah,
the Lone
yeah.
Star hiking trail and that tree's across the trail and I can't
Uh-huh.
hop over it and I've got to go around, oh, I'm just
Yeah.
like I'm spraying
Ah,
my legs, and as soon as I finish, I'm like scrubbing my legs with my hands to make sure that.
ah. No, that's a
And
very good point. Yeah. I
I
forgot
think
about the
I've
ticks. Go
yeah,
ahead.
I've been probably 2018 hiking on the trail, and one time I got lost and I knew the road, the kind of not highway, but the main road was ahead of me, so I was bushwhacking, and I got to the road because I knew the trail would be, over here. And I just looked down at my knee, and there was a little tick just walking across, and I knocked it off. And so far, knocking on wood, that was my only. But man, I have a phobia of hogs and ticks.
Yeah, that's so awesome. So I did this experiment a couple of years ago.
And that wraps up another exciting episode of the Trailblazing Texas podcast. We hope you enjoyed the episode today and stay tuned for our next episode where we will pick back up where we left off and guarantee to uncover many more hiking gems and share many more tips to enhance your experience on the trail. Until then, happy trails and happy hiking.